Here's Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media, our Tuesday regular. How we doing, PJ?
Very, very well. Feeling weather-like, it's cold.
Oh, stop. Big energy. It's November 1st. We're counting down to Christmas. Soon we'll be inundated with Mariah Carey songs.
It's beginning to look a lot like... I can't believe that. Oh, my God. I never even put that together
It starts November 1st now, huh? Yeah. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
Like the Christmas marketing push now, they're like, okay, Halloween's out of the way. We're moving.
My daughter hates Halloween, so her and her roommates started playing Christmas music at midnight. That's how much they wanted to move on from Halloween. So, yeah. Some people are into it.
So, we need your 2 cents now. Halloween, Christmas.
What are your holiday power rankings?
Well, I'm in that window where the kids just love Halloween. They love both of them. But Halloween was pretty fun last night.
Was it? Okay.
I saw them dressed up. They looked adorable.
They did. They did their adorable best, and they had a great time. And Alice kept going, candy? Trick or treat? More trick or treat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Did you see Dreger's tweet? After about the 70th door knocks, some kid acknowledged that, yeah, he was back for a second time.
Oh, really? Right?
And Dreger said, I admire the honesty, young man. We're getting close to the end. Here's the rest of it.
Yeah. We did the old leave the bowl out and definitely had teenagers steal a lot of the candy.
Oh, yeah. Because it doesn't work, Patrick.
I know.
Who leaves the bowl out in today's day and age and thinks that people are going to be people aren't responsible anymore? If they can get away with crime, they'll get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Candy crime. Exactly.
It's a small C crime. Small C.
You know what else is criminal?
Oh,
the lack of franchise value in the Vancouver Canucks compared to what they were 10 years ago. Last year, Forbes, and the Forbes list will be coming out here in a month, had them as the worst performing team over the last decade. Like no NHL team had increased their value less than the Vancouver Canucks. And these Sportico rankings are not very flattering either with the Canucks. Out of the top 10, worth less than the Edmonton Oilers. And I think part of that explains why Michael Doyle, their COO, was talking about all the upgrades to Rogers Arena and new seats yesterday at that presser.
Yeah, and the other thing that stood out to me, by being 11th, the Canucks, obviously it is a bit, there is guesswork here, but that means that they're at least on the cusp of not being a team that pays into revenue sharing. So, it's this is a team that was, top 5 at one point 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Time has come. It was good to hear that Doyle's talking about that. The arena, having seen like the Capital One Arena in Washington, Wells Fargo Center in Philly, those are arenas that are the same vintage essentially as Rogers, and they've had recent refreshes, new seats, new scoreboards. Obviously, they've upgraded the scoreboard at times at Rogers, but I know that new scoreboard is a big priority with the Canucks. But yeah, the sort of nuts and bolts of the experience needs some work. And it's not just about the seats. It's about sort of all the bits and pieces that go into the behind the scenes. And of course, we saw the photo, where was that last week when there was a leak in the roof, and that's going to happen. But, that was a bit of a metaphor, I thought, there for just the overall focus of things. And, they've redone the dressing room great, but it's, the fans in the end, the people who are paying the money, the people that are going to give you the franchise value, you need to look after them. And it's not just the suite holders. It is the overall experience, and, it needs a refresh. There's no doubt about that.
You know what? If you never traveled outside of Vancouver, you'd probably think Rogers was fine.
And for the most part, it is. I'll say this, for a building of that age, it is done reasonably well. They obviously are hammed in there on a smaller footprint, and so that's
just it. The bowl is fine. The bowl is fine.
The concourses are not wide enough. But I think they've done a reasonable job. I quite like what they've done with food and bev over the last few years. But they've done a reasonable job. But you're right that it is starting year by year now to be a little more antiquated and be more of a problem.
We just sent Rink Wide's Andrew Wadden down to Seattle, and he came back just glowing about what he saw down there. And it's hard not to be a little bit jealous. And then going to Edmonton, like when, Rogers Place there is just spectacular, huge, expansive mezzanines. It does make you a little bit jealous.
And they're starting to run into problems in terms of the space at the event level downstairs, where you just don't have the facilities that modern buildings and that, to some degree, professional hockey players, and I suppose basketball players as well, in the arena game, have come to expect. And that may be a problem going forward for player recruitment.
Yeah, Patrick. The renovations has been made for rejig and how they set things up. We finally saw the press conference room, or the room that they're going to use for coach availability, which is also going to double as basically audio visual meeting room for the team for the power play and penalty killing units. It's a nice space for sure, but they're constricted by footprint. The sort of overlap. There's become a bit of an issue with an overlap at the end of what used to be essentially the hallway, backing onto the visitors' dressing room. They've come up with a solution. It caused some issues, I think, when the Sabres were here, but when having talked to people who were dealing with the Pittsburgh room on Friday, they said it's just tight. There's nowhere to go. I don't think any NHL team ever tries to make it a cushy landing for the visiting. But this is going to be, I think, going forward, is one of the tighter spaces for visiting teams and all the sort of stuff that comes with it. And that's down to the footprint. They don't have much choice on that one. There's just not a lot of space. And, so that's something to think about. I mean, part of me wonders if they've held off so long on renovations because they've been waiting for the viaducts to come down. But that's still, as far as I understand it, not clear when that's going to happen, because that's, essentially an expensive thing for the city to do. And the city doesn't have a ton of money. Obviously, we have a new council now, and so it'll be interesting to see how they feel about it. It's a challenging underneath and challenging on the concourse, but in the end, I think they know, especially Mike Doyle was on at least the first part of the road trip. He was at Board of Governors meetings with the chairman as well, as I understand it. But he was on the team trip, and would have, saw what they've done in Philly and saw what they've done in Washington. I mean, the screen in Philly is essentially a curved TV screen. It's incredible. It is one of the most remarkable, impressive things you can see. And I have to think, I know the Canucks, again, there is an issue of sort of height in terms of the space that, if you're going to go up and down and hosting concerts, there is some challenges from that standpoint. But I have to think that was something that really caught their eye, because it's the way that you can just show things on it. It's one big board. It really pops, and done well, it adds to the experience.
Yeah. And one of I think the reasons why the Canucks are at where they're at here is obviously the performance of the club over the last 10 years hasn't been very good, but the turnover of business chiefs that they've also experienced, going back to Chris Zimmerman and then Victor DeBonis and then Jeff Stipek for a minute and then Trent Carroll and now Michael Doyle. It's been hard for anyone to see sort of a vision realized, and maybe it's got to be an Aquilini family vision realized for the arena. But I think, and it sounds like Rutherford has a fair bit of influence here on these sorts of things. I think at this stage of the game, the one thing they truly do lack, and the one thing that I think they're going to require to not only help the franchise value, but help the hockey operations department and player recruitment, they're screaming for a practice facility, Patrick. And after what happened this training camp, where you're having players shuttling about all over the lower mainland, to get their ice in, that's just simply not good enough at the NHL level these days. That might have been good enough at the NHL level 15 years ago or so, but a practice facility is now not a nice to do. If you ask me, it's a need to do.
It's a standard. It's a standard.
Yeah, no, it's standard operating procedure now.
Well, and if you take into the fact that in the end you have a tight footprint at the building, and the plan had been to go across the street and be part of the redevelopment of Plaza of Nations. They are not part of that. But in that redevelopment, we're going to be offices. Essentially the whole sort of medical operation, as I understood it, was going to be across the street. So, you start thinking about that, and you think about how tight everything is down there to begin with, and the renovations they have been able to put in, new weight room and new treatment facilities and that kind of thing. But they're still constricted. But if you had a whole new building, it makes sense. And you look, like I was at the Kraken. I went to see the Kraken's community facility last Thursday. Last Wednesday, I put together a story about basically youth hockey in Seattle. I mean, this is the first rink built inside the city of Seattle in 40 years. They had not had any ice in the city itself. Obviously, there's rinks in the suburbs, but in the city itself, there had not been an ice rink in 40 years. And so not only did they build 3 rinks there, including their practice rink, where they actually do everything, like they do their morning skates there, but they have their team offices. And that just was a reminder of sort of the scale to which this league has grown. It may still not be, may be in the big 4, but it's still not necessarily the high end that you get the NBA, certainly not MLB or the NFL. But still, the sort of scale of expectation of what a team looks like is, yeah, you're right. It's not a team that's shuttling between 2 different practice facilities in preseason, using, sort of scraping it out because in the end their home setup isn't ready to go. I mean, the fact that this team, that is something that raised my eyebrows. This team that was, didn't make the playoffs, had all summer to do all this. Obviously, it was an extensive rebuild, a lot of things to get done, but that wasn't ready to go even for training camp. I mean, let alone the start of the season. That did raise my eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah,
but there's not a lot of ice downtown here either.
It seems like
you get the microscopic Denman rink.
I mean, exactly.
You got Britannia, which should be. Does Britannia still exist? I don't even know.
Oh yeah. I mean, but the city has, the point is Vancouver has city. There's the rinks in the city, but still the downtown. Yeah, no, downtown right. They need a new rink, and that rink is. I wrote a story about this. I think almost last spring certainly, and talked to the guy that's doing the development across the street at the Plaza Nations, and the plan, they're still building a rink. He wouldn't tell me who the new operator is, but I kind of assume it's it's the guys at Ice Sports out of Burnaby.
Yeah, or something.
Somebody like that. But yeah, they're going to build a rink, and even part of it too was part of how he got that development done was he went to the city and said, "Listen, I know you guys need an ice rink. How about we do that?" And they're like, "Yes, absolutely."
So you're telling me there's going to be an ice rink at Plaza Nations regardless?
Yes,
and it won't be the Canucks practice rink.
Yeah. I mean, there's a tiny, of course, there's always a tiny, you never say never. Right?
No, 5% chance right now.
Was this like the
5 is big. I'll say 5 is a big.
Really? Was this like the first Abbotsford deal where they just overplayed their hand because they're the big bad Canucks and were left out of the deal?
I have never been able to get an answer on the record about this, but there was a deal, and then suddenly there wasn't. And as I was told from Dyson G. Wang at Canadian Metropolitan Properties, he said, ask the Canucks, and the Canucks declined to comment. So
it's a lot of those. I can remember one day the associate publisher of the Globe and Mail coming by my desk. We've got a deal with the Canucks coming up. We'll let you know more in time. And then the next week it was like, we don't have a deal with the Canucks anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I wonder why. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Does Rutherford addressing the room and basically threatening, some guys won't be here sort of thing, the changes are going to be in this room, with this roster, not coaching staff. Was that a move of pure brilliance, like to get them on board and basically let them know, it's not going to be Bruce despite what you're hearing on the outside? I mean, you don't typically go down to the room as a GM or a president of hockey operations, so you got to pick your spots wisely. I got to say, I think he might have picked a good spot.
Very old school, for sure, at least in terms of presentation. I found myself wondering exactly, the team's mood remained upbeat. It's funny, the Leafs are kind of talking in similar terms. Obviously, the Leafs have won a couple more games, but the Leafs are still kind of a bit not in a great spot. I think not where the people think they should be. The players were like, there's things happening. You get some bounces, sometimes you don't. That said, they're still 2-5-2 or 2-7. I mean, they literally don't even acknowledge those 2 points. They have, going into Seattle, they talked about being 0-7. Which, obviously was a very frustrating situation for everybody involved. But yeah, I mean, Rutherford, in the end, at the very least, went in and laid things out and said, guys, here's the deal. Either you start winning and I don't even know if it necessarily had to be an or else. You just have to tell everybody, here's what's happening. And also, here's what you're not doing. I have to imagine was part of that. I mean, that has been such a regular feature. Patrick Allvin brought it up again on Friday night. The sort of sense of you guys can do more yourselves in terms of your preparation, your mental focus, what you need to be successful. So sure. I mean, yeah. If the season turns around, it will certainly be an easy marker to point to and say, hey, this has made a difference. I think, it's something that at some point will definitely be followed up on with perhaps a more critical eye. But, the idea of the boss, the boss of bosses going in to say, guys, what the hell? I mean, it made sense. I mean, things were desperate. That was a team in not good frame of mind, and they did play better against Carolina. They didn't win, and they certainly didn't deserve to win given how they played in the third period. But they were in it through two periods. And then we saw it. I mean, we saw it work finally. I mean, Seattle was it was funny. I turned to Drancer when we were in Seattle early in the game. And I kind of said, there was just something about the way things were going and just realistically thinking about the Kraken. And I know you got upset about this last week, Matt, but thinking about the sort of relative scoring abilities of these two teams, I said, I feel like this team may be that bounce game where you just get it because, I mean, they won. They won because they outscored the opposition. They did in a team that's not a very high-end scoring team, but they outscored them, and that's what mattered. And so they got that win, and then they had that really good win on Friday. Now, we'll see how this sustains through the week. Obviously, they're playing a red hot. By the time people hear this, may have already started the game or whatever. But they're playing a red hot New Jersey team. Anaheim continues to be an interesting young group. And it's a tough week. It's a busy week. There's a lot of hockey.
Yeah.
We'll see where we stand by Saturday.
When should fans believe in the team again? Does 3 straight wins make you get there? Do you have to wait till this team is at least fake 500 before you start to say, okay, they're back on track here?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you run the table this week, that's 5 straight wins, right? I mean, you're certainly no worse off than you were when you lost 5 straight. You know what I mean? Like this is a team that will be, well, okay, they're streaky. We don't know. We don't know if they're world beaters, but the problem
I've always said about that though, Patrick, great that you've won 5 straight. Great that you're back to fake 500. But now you've played red hot to merely get back to that point, and now you got to do that again. You got to wait because you have to be 5 to 10. You got to be 10 games above 500 to make the playoffs. So you're still a long way away from being where you need to be.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. What I was saying is that you know that they're certainly not the team that was 0-5-2, but you're not. Right. You also know they're not a team that's come 1-5. Yeah. That's exactly. We're saying the same thing, just different ways. Yeah. That okay. Good for you. You got you picked up your socks and you kind of got yourself pointed in the right direction, but now you just got to keep doing it. And, that's right. And you can't afford. You can't afford another long losing streak, really. It is the old. So there is the stats thing. The losing streak is just. It's just the sequence. It just happened to be that those coin flips happen 5 times in a row. You're going to lose at 5 games at some point in the season. It's just sometimes they don't happen 5 times in a row. But if you're more than a coin flip team, now first of all you have to win the next 3 games, and then you have to show that you're more than a coin flip team. And if, as you said, you can't be a coin flip team if you think you're going to make the playoffs.
Lastly, and very quickly, our Bodog poll question, the Hughes brothers, all 3 of them. And I started to see a lot of this before the 2 wins, Patrick. Oh, let's just trade Quinn to Jersey, get it over with, take back a Hall so the brothers can reunite. What do you think? One day they all going to play on the same team?
No. I mean, the Stalls have played on the same team, but they've never been all on the same team. Mm-hmm. The Sutters never pulled that off. So,
despite their numbers, too.
But I mean, they had a few times together.
It's just a higher bar when you got to get 5 guys on the same team as a quarter of the roster. For God's sake.
Yeah. I don't think that happens. I mean, especially now with the salary cap and the reality of all 3 of them likely to be top end players, and the challenge of stringing that together and having the timing come up at the same time. I just. Maybe at the very tail end when Quinn is in his, he's in his elder statesman, and they get together to have one last kick of the can for the Mexico City Mad Dogs or whatever they're going to be called.
Mexico City Mad Dogs. Is that the Coyotes? Please tell me that's the Coyotes.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
course.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for this. Have a good week. Talk to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.